Hello there, fellow duplicant explorers. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to Oxygen Not Included, the Frosty Planet, Episode 9, Bottom Checkpoint. So once we get the ore scrubbers, I have to figure out the source of the ore. And I think probably the obvious way to do it is these biomes tend to have a lot of rust. And getting the rust deoxidizer allows me to produce oxygen and chlorine gas, and I can separate the oxygen and chlorine gas out from one another to store the oxygen or put the oxygen into the living areas of the base, and then the chlorine gas into a chlorine gas tank for the ore scrubbers to operate. I think... What is rust... What is it classified as? Oh, I might not even run into rust yet. But I do know that rust is rather common in these biomes, so... And then if not that, there's always bleach stone. And I believe I've found some bleach stone out here already. So one way or another, we'll get a source of chlorine gas to be able to use the ore scrubbers. Yeah, there's bleach stone right here. Pretty close to where the airlock is going to be. So we could always create a liquid lock in this area, even potentially using this ethanol that already exists, and then we'll dig out the bleach stone in a vacuum, and then the bleach stone will outgas as a sublimator to produce pure chlorine gas, and then we can bottle up the chlorine gas, put it, pump it, put it into gas storage, and then feed it to ore scrubbers. So using this ethanol that already exists as a liquid lock would be a really easy way to deal with that. So that should be the scrubber research. It is. And I'm going to get the HVAC research, or actually I'll get hazard protection next. Here it is. This is what the ore scrubbers look like. And I'll put 2 of them in. And then from this point on, this will be where the actual dock is located. And then after the suits and the checkpoint, we'll have a liquid lock separating out the 2 atmospheres. And then we can have the main transportation tubes. So fire pole, ladder, and eventually transit tubes. Way down the line. I'm also going to disable these buildings because, as I said, until we interact with anything that is Jeremy, I don't actually need them for any purpose. Plus, they're not being fed chlorine gas, so they wouldn't work anyway. Alright, I will say the oxygen here is pressurized enough that I am going to create a temporary solution for it. So that we don't end up with, like, popped eardrums. So I'm going to temporarily disable this gas pump so that I don't max out my power infrastructure, and set up a gas pump here to pump out some of this carbon dioxide and even potentially oxygen. It really depends on, once this carbon dioxide is gone, how much oxygen is there, and I'm going to be manually controlling this. Actually, you know what I could do is I could just signal switch automation wire it so that I don't need a dupe to physically interact with it. Let's raise the construction priority of this up to, like, let's say 7, just so that we can avoid overpressurizing our base. Because it's getting pretty close to that threshold. Yep, we already hit popped eardrums, which adds stress. So, I was wondering about the equilibrium, and now they have my answer. I need to actually fix it, which is fine. And what I'm doing is I'm planning on pumping the carbon dioxide basically right over to our aloe vera farm, so that we can have these plants have access to the carbon dioxide to be able to create more oxalate. Alright, who leveled up? Scorpio. Perfect. I'm going to have Scorpio, high priority power control systems for the wood burner, because that will allow us to produce less carbon dioxide, which is also part of the solution. And hazard protection is now done, so let's go up to HVAC. So here we go, doing the tune-ups. Or not. I thought he was going to tune up, but he's not doing that right now. Okay, so the northern pump is off, meaning that we're no longer vacuum sealing this area, at least for now. And instead, we're going to be focusing on the pumping out of the excess carbon dioxide, and I'm not going to automate it. I'm not going to set it up any beyond this. Again, this is a no backseating series, so the solutions they're coming up with, I do realize are temporary, but I know how to make them better. I'm just not interested or concerned. I'm working on the priority, which I think should be obvious to most at this point. So for the exosuit forge, we're going to need a lot more refined metal, which means hammering away here. I have a lot of iron, so let's make a production queue of 20. I don't want to do it infinitely because it's easy to forget. Well, let's make up into 20. And then we will start setting up the checkpoints in the docks. So at this point, we can... I might want to leave a little bit of extra room. So at here, I'm going to set up the actual physical docks, which will have the suits. And I might put like 5 or so to scale. It's more than our population, but 5 is probably a pretty good number to have. We're going to need a lot of refined metal for this. So these, if we take a look at the gas overlays, ventilation overlays, the ore scrubbers require chlorine, and these require oxygen. So the idea that I had here is to, let's go ahead and tile up the roof here. And then to put the tanks that these require to operate just above where it physically is. We're going to need a lot more refined metal to be able to actually produce that stuff. If you take a look at the Alvelvera farms, yep, the carbon dioxide is going where it's needed to go. And we're depressurizing the carbon dioxide. And then I just have this as a signal switch because I can turn it on and off at will to control how much pressure there is. And our added carbon sink area here can take a lot more carbon dioxide. In fact, I can have this pooled with carbon dioxide. It's not a big deal. Because of how voluminous the outside of our living quarters are, I can add a lot more gas to the outside without it becoming a pressurized problem than the inside. Temperature modulation's going pretty quick. And that would, if you didn't get the research from the research portal, this is where you would pick up the liquid ice liquefier. And then also the insulated tiles to reduce heat transfer between the ambient heat and areas. The other thing I might be able to do for now is to have a box dedicated for iron ore so that we can refine a little bit more easily on the rock crusher. So the person operating the rock crusher doesn't need to go find the iron ore themselves. New printables. Suit wearing, supplying, doctoring, caregiver, germ-resistant Luddite. Research, suit-wearing building, research, green thumb, iron gut. I like nails. So, finally, we have another raffle. Good luck. So I picked nails because they are suit-wearing and building, which is a pretty good combination for a bio. And they also do research. And it's sometimes very helpful to have two researchers, because once you're doing astrological research, people sometimes have to be deployed out of the base. So for nails, let's go ahead and set up another mess table, and I'll have that as a high priority. Fill up the other cot, and then set up priorities for nails. So nails, you are going to get research, building, research and building as top priorities. And already leveled up one. I'm going to do improved carrying, working towards suit wearing. And I think, yeah, it's becoming overpressurized where the carbon dioxide is, which was a thought I had. I figured that it might be the case. So, if we have another researcher, the other thing I might be able to do is to reduce Scorpio's research lower and operation higher, so he does more tune-ups. Now that we have a backup researcher, and as you can see, they're working in tandem together on both platforms. Alright, question for you all. Should I continue working on the airlock or take on another task? It's been a while since I started the airlock. I just want to make sure that that is currently the top priority for you all. Because if it isn't, I can always change gears. And I'll give you 2.5 minutes to vote on that. Taking a look at our kcals, it's just about the right time to start cooking these skewers again. Kcal's about 3,000 or so, which is like enough for about a day, so we might as well start skewering it up. So who is good at operating? So Scorpio is going to be put to work tuning up the wood burner, and then also operating the rock crusher, where the new guy, Nails, will be able to do more of the research. In here, we wanted the iron ore. Alright, the errand priority here is the current errand for Scorpio. Perfect. That's what we wanted. So now the wood burner's tuned up and producing 450 watts rather than 300. Making some refined metals, so that we can set up more of the gate and airlock here. In terms of research, we're pretty close, closing in on HVAC, which is great. Are oxygen mechs useful? So what I generally find oxygen mechs ideal for, just in my opinion, is when you have when you have an environment of controlled pressure, but it's not conducive to breathing. So for instance, if you have like a wheezewort farm full of hydrogen gas, where it's pressurized to not harm your dupes, but they need an oxygen mask or something like that. So there are some isolated cases where it's useful, like working in, let's say, a natural gas power plant or a hydrogen-filled wheezewort farm or something like that, where like they can survive the environment, but they can't breathe, and you don't want them to have, you know, to be exposed to the gases. But generally speaking, atmosuits are usually my go-to because they are temperature protected. So if you're going somewhere super cold, it's going to probably be better to be in a suit rather than to be cold so much so that your move speed drops to 0. Well, that's odd. Scorpio, you can't be both of the researchers, so I'm going to re-roll that. Toxie. The new guy is yours. Congrats. Alright, so the very high pressure oxygen here is, it's becoming a little bit more normalized. It's working. So some of the other things that we're going to need is the exosuit forge station. But for now, I'm just going to put down the other 3 atmodocs. And then we'll have the atmodoc checkpoint here, and then we'll have a liquid lock beyond it. We almost got the HVAC researched. And here's all our suit docks. We do have some stress going on. Probably because of the shrewberry consumption. They were eating grizzly food. So now they're eating better meals, and stress shouldn't be a problem. We'll just keep an eye on it, because we have a lot of levers to pull to be able to make morale a lot higher. But for now, it doesn't seem to be an issue. And you guys also voted for me to continue working on checkpoint, so I won't change gears. I'll continue to do it. So here's the actual checkpoint, where if we pass left to right, we put a suit on. So you can see it's directional. Maybe... I already have the flooring. Maybe I'll go up to 6. And then at this point, we're going to want a liquid lock. And I'm going to have like a spill-safe liquid lock. Like one that I can't screw up. To make sure that I can't just like, oopsie, did a little mopping and our liquid lock is gone. But I'm going to disable this building so that we can pass by the checkpoint without a suit on. Hubix, thank you for the resub. So liquid lock will be here, and then our main transit tube area will be in this location. So basically where I built the ladder was a prediction, but I was wrong. Initially, I'm really only planning on having like 1 wide for 1 ladder, as that's the bare minimum, but eventually we're going to want space to the left for tubes and for fire poles. Sean, you leveled up. And Nabla. At this point, I actually might not use their skill points, so that there's not a morale issue, because I don't really need them to be more skilled. I need them to be happy. All right, yeah, the pressure in here is a little bit more back to normal. I'm continuing to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. It looks pretty good, even without the automation. So once we dig everything up, I'm going to want to sweep it all up so it's a nice clean airlock. I know that might not seem necessary, but it's really hard to tell if there's contaminants or other issues with the airlock if it's like super dirty and filled with junk. So we'll tidy that up, and then I'll start to set up the forge and to set up a oxygen pump so that we can store oxygen for the suits themselves. And that will allow us to start to travel around and explore downwards. How's the wood stock? That's a very good question. Lower. But we just had an explosion of phlox pop. So it's lower, but I think it will be self-correcting soon. In fact, let's go ahead and smash 2 more phlox eggs, because it's overpopulated in here. So we definitely have a Wheezewort cold biome here, and then some bleachstone there. Already pretty good finds for almost no exploration that I've done so far. Because I know ultimately you guys voted on exploration, but like, you kind of need suit checkpoints before you get exploration. Chicken and the egg. Yeah, here we go. So here's some antler shearing. I also got a little tired of there being farts up in here. So I'm gonna set up some anti-fart. Even if it's a little ugly. So liquid lock is not quite done, but it's getting there. And HVAC is coming underway. Oh, another printable. Building, supplying, tidying with so many negative traits. Supplying research, dig, farm, or pemmican. This person has a lot of positive traits, but they don't really align to the things they care about, so we're going to go with pemmican. And a good first exploration target would be here, I think. Deconstruct this stuff and carve up another lumen quartz. Oh yeah. The oxygen pressure is definitely a lot more normal in here than it was before. Fantastic. Exosuit Forge. Let's get one in. So here's the thing about the Exosuit Forge. If I'm not mistaken, it requires... No, I was wrong. It only requires 480 watts. So I have to be careful about when I use it. For some reason I thought it was greater than what a normal wire can handle, but that isn't the case. So it's quite a lot of power, and we probably don't want to be running the gas pump while we use the Exosuit Forge. Alright, at this point, we can start to put ethanol in this liquid lock. Get the liquid lock made, and then that will seal the outside from the inside, which is quite handy. I'm surprised I don't have HVAC yet. I think Toxie must be building rather than researching. So I'm going to lower building down to 1 so that research is the highest priority. Another thing that I might want to do, I'm going to set it to 8. I know, priority creep. But, one of the reasons why the carbon dioxide isn't being filtered out faster is all of the aloe vera is ready to be tended to, and there's no one tending it to it, so there's tons of oxalate here to be liberated from the plants, but, like, we actually need someone to physically go do that. So in terms of priorities, that would be a farming task for Nabla. And Nabla is busy ranching and also cooking, so it's... Nabla's pretty busy. Once we... Well, we have about 20,000 kcals of food, so I think what I'm going to do is just make, like, one more skewer, and then put a pause on that for a bit. We may need to go sweep up, or mop up rather, some additional ethanol for the extra liquid lock. So I'll keep an eye on that as well. Because we do have some unswept ethanol here, but I don't know how much more we're going to need. I'm also going to put a pause on going any deeper into this hole for exploration until we have more of this set up. So the other thing that we're going to need for the atmosuit is reed fiber. And reed fiber is... Our source of reed fiber is almost certainly going to be banoth, sheared banoth. So as you can see here, if you just out and kill the banoth, you only get meat. So we need to actually put the banoth somewhere where we can shear them. Meaning that we're going to need a banoth ranch to start to, unless we can find reed fiber somewhere else, but I don't think we have. So the banoth eat the plume squash plants, and the plume squash plants need ethanol unless we rely upon wild plume squash. So having a source of ethanol to be able to tend to them is going to be really useful, but that's actually pretty easy because all we really needed for that would be like a pitcher pump here. So what I'm getting at is it might be wise to have a somewhat of a consolidated banoth ranch in this area so that we can easily pump the ethanol for the plume squash plants. So I'm going to update the priority because that's actually kind of two things. Build a checkpoint and ranch banoth. One easy way to do that is just to put a farm tiles on the roof here. Get a pneumatic door in there. And sort of lay it out in the same way that we laid out the one above. And it will be not as large. So to reach the required 96 tiles, which would do the max, actually, knowing that, the area of this ranch should be expanded a little bit now that I have 2 tiles there. So I'm actually going to knock out 2 walls over here. So this is max size, so it can accommodate all 8 critters. The reason I mentioned that is this ranch is going to be a little weirder because of where the ethanol physically is. So let's go ahead and put the pitcher pump here This pitcher pump probably can manage, like, without having to re-up the ethanol supply, probably can manage quite a long duration of banoth for, you know, for the population. What I want to do is I want to move it over to the right as much as possible so that we can accommodate more banoth. Because the more banoth that we have in there, the more reed fibers that we'll get, and the more reed fibers that we get, the more suits that we get. Because we can also do other things for reed fibers as well. For instance, using the reed fibers for morale or for bedding or clothing or something. Who knew ranching and farming would be my saving grace on an ice planet? Almost all oxygen not included biomes do just that. That, generally speaking, the first to manufacture the initial resources usually requires ranching and farming, and then eventually you gain access to higher levels of resource processing. So for instance, normally you might have Drecos, which produce reed fibers, and then you can morph them to glossy Drecos to produce plastics. But if you want a lot of plastics, it might not make a lot of sense to have a massive amount of glossy Drecos. It might then make more sense to have petroleum refinement. So initially you do ranching as a stopgap measure just to get a little bit of resources, and then you can scale it up and, you know, with better levels of industry. And that's sort of how oxygen not included is for quite a lot of its like research tree. So let's also put the mesh tiles in here so that it doesn't trap gas or liquids, just in case. And then initially we're going to want a critic drop-off rather than egg storage. The same old shearing, grooming setup as before. Taking a look at the pressure. Looks really good, actually. And you can see all of the excess carbon dioxide definitely got trapped in the bottom. I think there's still more ethanol to be swept. So I'm going to make that like a high priority sweep, just to figure out how much more ethanol we're going to need for the liquid lock. Because it's hard to tell if we don't sweep it all up. Hey, Raul, how goes it? It goes pretty well. We haven't had a lot of hang-ups yet. That might change. So let's take a look at the mammoth diet. So it's 5 reed fiber per 10 cycles. So 10 cycles gives us 5 fiber. We only need 2 fiber per suit. And then they need about, let's say, almost 2k plume squash per cycle. And then they also, the plume squash grows. So, well, let's look at the plume squash first. So a plume squash requires 15 kilograms of ethanol per cycle for about 444 kcal of plume squash per cycle. So 444 kcal per plume squash per cycle. It's like, means that we need about 5 plume squash per mammoth-ish. So this isn't really going to be a high population mammoth ranch. It's going to be a pretty lower population mammoth ranch. Maybe of just 2 or 3 mammoth. Depending on space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that is about 6,200 plume squash per cycle. I can always add more, you know, if we move the ethanol around. But then the 1778 needed means that we'll have enough for about 3.5 banoth. Meaning that, like, given that we don't perfectly fertilize and tend to the plants, 3 is probably the target population. Thereabouts. And yeah, I'm shifting the ethanol pool just a little bit to the right with this digging to move it over so there's a little bit more space. But we don't need that much space. I'm not too concerned with having like a max population size Banoth ranch. In fact, that might not even be all that theoretically possible, because if every possible floor tile is a farm tile, there's still not going to be enough plume squash growing to feed the Banoth unless you're doing like crop tending. But if you have crop tending, then it's not really a ranch anymore. So I think in this case it makes more sense to just know that it's, you know, we're going to have a finite amount of Banoth. What got entombed? Alright, and the gas reservoirs are done. Perfect. So the oxygen pressure in the outside of the base here, as you can see, is getting a little low. I do have a fair bit of oxalite, so I think I'm going to start to oxalite torch sconce here again. To re-oxygenate the outside of the base. And then I'm going to be out of Banoth squash plants full stop at this point. So we also, as we go get the Banoth, we'll have to dig up the plants. And the idea that I had was to move this over, to make enough room so that we can have a door here in this spot, so that we can easily avoid having the ethanol flood back. Alright, I'm not interested in another dupe at this moment, so I'm just going to print water, which is useful for research. No research is currently selected, so let's try to figure out some basic research for us to get. So I don't think it would hurt to start to get pathogen diagnostics, just in case we run into some germs. And we have no seed available for 5 of them. Not an issue. I figured that'd be the case. So now at this point, I'm just like digging just to lower the water level so that we can have a pneumatic door that doesn't necessarily get flooded. So something like that. Looking at the other ranch, we have the correct amount of critters. Perfect. Am I overfilling the liquid lock? Good question, but no. In fact, we need more ethanol. And I'm probably not going to draw from here, because now this is the fertilization source for this ranch. So I'm going to want ethanol from somewhere else. So let's take a quick look. The somewhere else easily could be this area. We'll tap this area. It also gives me access to another quartz if I want it. Alright, oxygen pressure in the main area of the base is pretty good, and then the reoxygenation of this area is happening right now, and it looks okay. Oh, made a mess. Okay. You made a mess in our airlock, which is really weird, but it immediately became liquefiable ice. What the hell is... Alright. Both of the toilets were out of order and no one was tending to it, so I'm going to make that an emergency priority. I should have noticed. No one wanted to plunge. And now we're making messes everywhere. The thing is... Well, we'll get it cleaned up. But the thing is, like, it becomes solid, so it doesn't really spill too far, which is good. But I don't want to leave it uncleaned for very long. One of the disadvantages of using an outhouse over the liquid plumbing is the outhouses, of course, can become clogged more frequently. Alright, I also don't want tons of polluted stuff everywhere, so I'm going to high priority mop. Alright, you know what? You're not doing it. There, now you're doing it. High priority mop, so we clean that up. Cool. And then high priority sweep, so that we get rid of the liquid water, or the polluted water, and put it away so it doesn't outgas for more farts. Don't want more farts. So this sharing looks pretty good. I'm going to dig along here so we can add a ceiling. But here, as you can see, it's a proper stable. Not max size, but we don't need it to be max size. And then we have the access to adding ethanol over here pretty quick and accessible. Thank you for tuning in to Oxygen Not Included Frosty Planet, which originally streamed live on Twitch August 1st. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you would like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and a special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch a next episode or an upcoming stream of mine. Farewell, my fellow duplicates.